Hello, here I'm going to introduce Redis, which is an open source in-memory key value store. Redis is often used as a database cache to make cloud-based applications more scalable by relieving the load on a relational database. I will give VB.NET code that calls into the TCP interface of Redis, and then I'll give a COM component equivalent that is callable from VBA. The best place to start is its Wikipedia entry, which I suggest you read. One highlight is that the name Redis stands for Remote Dictionary Server. Worth stressing is that Redis runs in its own process and so is shared across a whole machine. That is to say, a single instance is accessible by all processes on that machine. Moreover, network programming allows remote access from a different machine. That Redis runs in its own process means its data durability will outlast any excel.exe sessions that may have closed. This can help VBA programmers develop applications with greater data resiliency. Redis is offered as part of a portfolio of components for developers of cloud-based solutions. It is available on Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Heroku. Redis was voted Most Loved Database in the Stack Overflow Developer Survey 2017 and 2018. I have upgraded Windows 10 with Anniversary Update, and I have been enjoying the Windows subsystem for Linux, allowing me to run an instance of Ubuntu. So for my installation, I downloaded the tarball from the Redis homepage, and I unpacked the source code therein with the Linux tools on the command line and began building with the make tools. That was fun. It chained a whole lot of other downloads and subsequent makes. It was quite involved, but I got a working version in the end. So I am using an instance of Redis running on Ubuntu, running on Windows 10 subsystem for Linux. For a native install, there is a stack Q&A for this, which has been viewed very many times, and there is an answer suggesting that a division of Microsoft MS OpenText have some MSI install files at their GitHub page. So you can see almost 500,000 times this has been viewed. And down here we have MS OpenText, and there are some MSI files. So if you don't want to use Ubuntu, then you can use, I presume these work because they are Microsoft builds. A full list of Redis clients is here. I will give some code later, but I want to get some initial data into my Redis instance, and I'm going to run another instance of Ubuntu to run a Unix command line interface client. It's called Redis CLI. So let's just switch to my Ubuntu. So that's what happens when you get it up and running. It says it's, so obviously this is running locally, so the IP address for this would be 127.0.0.1. That's the loopback address or local host. And I have a second Ubuntu window / there we go. So here we have the prompt 127.0.0.1 localhost, and this runs a standard default port is 6379. So there are some commands. We have keys set and get. The keys pattern, but with the keys you can query for the keys in the database. It is a key value store. This won't do anything at the moment because I've deleted it from earlier. We can say set, so let's set some data here. So we go set foo bar, and it says OK. That's good, no errors. And then we got get down here. So if we say get foo, then it will say bar. That's good. And now that we have something in our database, we should say key star returns a list of keys. Apparently you're not supposed to use keys in production when you have a full database because it's complex, it has a high time complexity. so that won't be very scalable. So the next question is how to connect and communicate with Redis via code. It would appear that the bare bones Redis install does not come with an HTTP interface, though there is an ecosystem of add-ons that do offer that option. The default method of calling Redis is detailed on this page, the Redis protocol specification. There is a serialization protocol called RESP, not to be confused with REST, which details the sequence and formats of bytes of messages and message responses. More on RESP later. But in this section headed networking layer, which is here, a client connects to a Redis server, creating a TCP connection to the port of 6379. While RESP is technically non-TCP specific, in the context of Redis, the protocol is only used with TCP connections or equivalent stream-oriented connections like Unix sockets. So that says, to me, that says you must use sockets. Instead of, we don't have an HTTP web service to call. We have to, which is quite a high-level interface, and we know how to call this from VBA, but instead we have to drop down and write a sockets interface. Now, on the list of clients I found earlier, there is in fact a VB instance called Redis, and we have a link. We have a link here. So I downloaded that, and this was beautifully factorized. The person who wrote this factorized it beautifully, and he's separated out an interface for every command, such as keys, get and set. He's factorized out the interface, and so you see the set command here and the get command here. But because I'm writing a blog, I wanted to sort of get the minimal amount of code so I can copy and paste into my blog. For that reason, I have this code here. So you see, we need two special classes. We need the network stream class and we need the TCP client class. And here we connect, as this should be recognizable as the IP address and port number. We get hold of the stream associated with that connection, and then we write to that stream. Well, first of all, we get some ASCII message. So that was what you see in that's the sort of thing we put in the command line interface, get foo, and then return. And then we write it, and then we flush it, and then once we've flushed it, then we can go read the response. So we get establish the size of the response, and then we read it in, and then we convert it to a string. So let's just run this. And then we must find, because the buffer may be quite big, we must find the trailing character return. And let's just run this. So it's VB.net. So you can see we have the result bar. So we said get foo, and we got response bar. We have this format called resp, which is basically saying it's got a string coming and it's got 3 characters. And that's an example of RESP, which we were looking at here. We'll see more of this in a moment. So you can go read the RESP protocol description, but the guy who wrote Redis has in fact, he has a complete implementation which essentially does some string handling, pulls out the results from the returned response. So that's an implementation there. But I just wanted to show you that although we have a client, this is all very well, but this is for VB.net programmers, and so it's quite simple. If you're a VBA person, you want to be able to call into it. Now, the quickest way for a VBA developer to access Redis is to take the above code and house it in a COM-DLL assembly and implement a COM interface so that it's callable from VBA. Now, I've actually written plenty of C# COM-DLLs on this blog for interop, but today I give the VB.net COM-DLL interop assembly. You follow these instructions, so you go for a Visual Basic, and then you ask for a class library, and then you say select COM class from the templates list, And what happens is, so this is the standard code we had before for just a console, but here we have code. It adds all that is required in order to get the COM interface working, so class ID and interface ID, what have you. And so here it looks pretty much the same. It looks pretty much the same, except we haven't hard-coded the command. We still hard-coded the IP address, and I suppose you could add some extra parameters here. But it does pretty much the same thing. It writes to the stream and then gets a response. Parsing response I have not given, but if you're really interested in that solution, you can sort of merge in with this code, and then you'll have a solution. I'm not going to give you code for that because I've actually taken a different path, and I'll show you that in the next video. But just to prove that this can work from just to prove that this COM component does work, I have some client code here. I'm just spinning up an instance of Excel off screen. So here I'm using late binding. But I'm saying get foo, which we know is bar. We set that earlier, and here I'm saying set a different data item. So that's Baz, set Baz to Barry, and then that should return Barry. And then the key list should have 2 items in it. After that should be foo and Baz. So get foo, return that bit. Set Baz Barry, returned OK, and get Baz, returned Barry, and then the keys asterisk keys wildcard returned this. So as you can see, you've got 2 items. First one is 3 characters long, second one is 3 characters long. That concludes this part. In the next part, I will show you how we can run a sockets interface from VBA using a transcribed Windows API from C++.